This person has had a chunk taken out of his brain and still able to find a way to have a successful relationship. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage Jody, my good friend.
Thanks for the intro. Downside of not having a complete brain means reading. So spent a lot of time thinking about what makes me me. Is it my interests? Is it that I'm a native New Yorker? Is it that I've had a large chunk of my brain removed? I used to think I'm a passionate amateur pilot. That's who I am. That's when I was 19. I dropped out of college and I started flying airplanes. But then I suddenly developed epilepsy at 26. Took me a little while, but I came to realize that my days of flying were over. Nothing could possibly replace aviation for me. But I soldiered on, managed to graduate with a computer science degree, found I would find a way to enjoy my life without my greatest passion. Unfortunately, my wife of 4 years didn't take it as well as I did. On a trip to Europe, I end up in the hospital and we find out that I need to get life-risking brain surgery. And I encourage her to keep going on the trip and have fun, and let's just say she really left me behind. So I thought I would be alone perhaps for the rest of my life, because the rest of my life may have only been the next 9 months. So when I started dating again, I was nervous to tell people about my epilepsy. I was scared they would think I was broken, diseased, undesirable. I called it the Scarlet D. I thought that if they just knew me without knowing my epilepsy, they would think better of me. But I still decided to tell people. I decided to try in different ways, and I was actually really surprised at how well it was received. But I was yet to get brain surgery, and I was still nervous that I would come out of it completely undateable. So 1 month out of brain surgery, I get on OkCupid, and I'm like, all right, let's find something, anything, just anyone. So I matched with the girl, and I'm like, all right, time to take the new brain out for a spin. Let's go. All right. So I was still nervous. So on the first date, I actually went on a practice date with my 50-year-old aunt. I was like, all right, we go to the bar that I was planning on, and let me tell you, my aunt was thoroughly charmed. But I still wasn't super confident that this girl would react the same way. I was having difficulty with loud noises. I was, again, 1 month out of brain surgery, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna get stressed out. I'll pack CBD oil. Oh, I might need to, but I might get tired. I'll grab 5-hour energy. But importantly, I wasn't pitying myself. I was just laser focused on presenting the best version of myself that I could. So when we first met, I said the sexiest pickup line you can imagine. I said, hi, I just had brain surgery, while pulling my hair back from my brain surgery scar. She was clearly confused, but after asking if, like, are you okay? Yeah, totally, I'm okay. And she decided to stay on the date. And despite all my fears, the date actually went quite well. I didn't spend 30 minutes talking about how I'm an amateur pilot, because I'm not anymore. Instead, I spent 30 minutes asking her about her life and talking about my other interests, hiking, travel, etc. The one quirk that did happen is the surgery also removed part of the brain that does facial recognition. So when she went to go to the bathroom and other women were coming back, I was like, the right height. I didn't know for sure that it was my date until she was like right here, like, hi. But yeah, ultimately, they still ended up going very well. I mean, it could have gone better pickup line, something like that. But what it showed me is that it's not the facts about me that mattered, it's how I behave. Like, if you have a story about overcoming a disability, I think that's a lot sexier than the story of growing up without ever facing adversity. Like, who do you want to date? The one-legged person who still biked the Tour de France, or the trust fund baby who had a rented Lamborghini and drove the Tour de France? But how much should we identify with our facts? How much does our story determine who we are? In the months leading up to my brain surgery, I was agonizing over the idea of this self. If I am my brain and I cut out a part of my brain, am I still me? What if I wake up with different interests, different abilities? What if I'm suddenly bad at video games? My entire identity was at risk. So, I mean, what that makes up who I am. People's perception of you certainly includes the facts about you, but as I said, most of their perception comes from how you behave around them. Now, some people wouldn't date me at all because of a simple fact about me. I couldn't drink alcohol because of the epilepsy. That has nothing to do with my personality, but it's still a deal breaker to some people, so I reconsidered what facts I needed to share about my dating profile. I figured that some people might be turned off if I put epilepsy on there, when they might actually like me for who I am if they just met me and found out I had epilepsy later. I didn't think that that was dishonest. I mean, we're putting our best foot forward, right? I wrote, I like hiking on my profile, but before epilepsy, I didn't also write, I am generally messy unless someone is coming over. Or my dad died when I was 13. I don't need to put that on my profile, even though I'm not ashamed of it. And importantly, putting that on my profile says something I don't mean to convey, is that I need you to know that my dad died before you meet me. It's not that big of a deal to me. I don't want it to be a big deal to you. So, and I also know I won't get away with hiding it or lying about it. A partner is going to find out that I'm a bit messy or that I don't drink. And if I go on a few dates with someone and they're super exciting and then, oh, you don't drink, and that's a heartbreaker for me, because it's like, oh, they don't want to date me because of this one flaw. Oh. So, but I also reconsidered, do I even want to date that person who's like, oh, alcohol's so important to me that my partner has to be able to drink alcohol too? No, I don't. I don't want to date that person. So I spent hundreds of hours crafting my dating profile over the years, and I needed to convey that I'm smart and funny without saying I'm smart and funny. We are such complex creatures, and we can't simply describe ourselves with a list of adjectives. We show people who we are, we don't tell them. We need to package our personality into boxes we call words and actions, and in practice we call communication. I mean, for example, if I were to say I'm a really smart guy, like top 1% in the world, what do you hear? Do you hear that I'm really smart, or do you hear that I'm really arrogant? But I didn't say that I'm arrogant. I said I'm smart. But so I say I don't drink. What do you hear? Some people will hear, oh, that guy's going to judge me when I drink, or oh, that guy doesn't know how to party, or oh, that person must have a really somber reason, like maybe their parents were alcoholics, maybe they were alcoholics. Like, I just don't drink. But so I also package that for other people. I have to package that I don't drink and that I'm an absolute genius. It's the same thing. So I package the bad news like this. I used to have seizures, so I don't drink. But I'll happily buy you a drink if you don't mind me sipping on a mocktail. Now, imagine the first sentence without the second. A sad story becomes a flirty invitation. It's no longer about how I can't drink, it's about that I'm okay with it. I'm owning it, and owning it is sexy. Epilepsy will always be a part of my story, just like my dad dying, but what matters to me is that epilepsy is not who I am. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Brain damage and death doesn't have to be the first thing you think about when you think about me, unless I make it that way. The first thing I say to people when I meet them doesn't have to be about how my dad died and that I'm missing 10% of my brain, present company excluded. Although I even managed to go this long without telling you the real reason you should never date me, I'm vegan. In some form of luck, I already had that practice breaking bad news from telling people about my dad. So when I had to tell people about my epilepsy, it was not so hard. If someone asks like, oh, wait, what do your parents do? I could respond with, oh, my dad passed away. But then the story is super somber and I don't want that. So I just, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll respond differently. I might just say, oh, he floats around in the Rockaway Bay a few million pieces. If I just say it casually, as I would say anything, I'm demonstrating that it's okay that my dad died. You can be okay too. I was more than prepared to break the news about epilepsy. It's, why can't you drink? An easy dodge would be, I don't like it, or health reasons. But that also communicates something. It communicates, oh, that person's really private. They don't really want to talk about it. If I just say, I have epilepsy, and that there's a chance it can trigger a seizure, it communicates the truth and shows that I'm okay with having epilepsy and that you can be okay with me having epilepsy. I dictate my story. If I decide that me having epilepsy isn't a big deal, then it isn't. The most impactful revelation that came from my brain surgery is that I learned that the brain is far more mechanical than I realized. It's not unlike the rest of the body in that way, except that we only tend to identify with our brains. We identify with our mental peculiarities, like I'm an anxious person or I'm an angry person. But if you have uncontrollable anxiety, your amygdala is malfunctioning in much the same way your appendix is malfunctioning and giving you a stomachache. But you'll never hear someone with appendicitis say, I'm just a stomach-achy person. It's part of my identity. It's who I am. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's that you are the only person who decides who you are and how people perceive you. It's not your story that creates you. You create your story.
and I was curious how having epilepsy change your perspective of sex, because
So my seizures didn't necessarily interrupt my life all that often. And so this is actually a common misconception about epilepsy, is that a lot of them are those convulsive seizures. Mine were actually, I could have had one right now and none of you would have noticed. It's the feeling of something is about to go wrong and then something did go wrong. And that's it, 3 times a day for 2 years. And a couple times it got a little bit worse, or gaps in memory. But it didn't truly impact my sex life in that way.
Was epilepsy the reason of your brain surgery? So I was wondering, so it was like localized for you. So.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I got brain surgery so shortly after getting diagnosed is, one, the medication didn't work. I had 5 different medications that just all didn't work. The other is it was just this tiny little spot in the right amygdala, right hippocampus, and anterior right temporal lobe. And those are all parts that, as you can see, I didn't really need. Fear, and who needs that?
Okay, yeah. Well, all right, thank you. That was a very...
Cured my anxiety.
How is your relationship with the doctor right now?
Extremely amazing. I'm in the best relationship of my life. And I have to say, in part, thanks to the changes that happened to me from removing my right amygdala and my brain surgery. Like, I became a more empathetic person. I became a more emotional person, a more emotionally available person, literally cutting out the inhibiting part of my brain to allow me to connect with other people. Highly recommend the surgery.
How, if at all, has your personality changed since the surgery?
Yeah, it's certainly more talkative, and I mean, I would have, some of the stuff I've done, like go to authentic relating events where everyone just talks about their feelings, and now I'm like, oh, emotions, let's get in, let's go, talk to me. Oh my God, I read a whole book about emotions, and it's just, I've demonized the right amygdala so much. There's so much science I've seen on it where it's just like the source of a lot of evil in the world.
Slow it down, would you give it a rest? Covered in clouds of your regret. Why beat yourself up if you'll do